I was born in 1942 to Jane and Paul Eldrith. I should say Jane Macaulay Eldrith. I was a member of a family of 8 children. I had an older brother, Richard, 2 younger brothers, Paul Jr. and Kenneth. My older sisters were Betty Lou and Pauline. Then along came me, and my younger sisters were Hazel and Janie. I was initially born at Conowingo, Maryland, in a very small little house, and we moved to a farm that was in Rollingsville, Maryland. I believe the address might have been Calora, I'm not sure, but it was on Rollingsville Road. It was a small farm. I guess my dad must have done some farming, but I was really too young to remember. I remember when he built a sawmill, and we had a lot of cats and a dog. The dog's name was Buddy. He was a good old dog, and we had him from the time he was born till the day he died. And he was a white, fluffy dog. I remember him very well. My childhood until I was about, I guess, maybe 7 years old, was spent on the farm. And at that time, we left the farm and moved across the road to a house where we stayed until Mom and Dad and all of us kids built the house on my grandfather Eldridge's land that we lived in the rest of Mom and Dad's life. And at Mom's death, the house was then taken over by my brother Paul Jr., so it stayed in our family ever since the time it was built, which was really unique, I think, to keep a family home. It was important to my mom that we keep the home. During the time I lived there, that's where I really grew up. I went there as a young child and grew to a young lady. I started dating when I was 16. Don't mind saying I was pretty popular. Didn't look that great, but everybody seemed to like me, especially the boys. I ended up going steady, as we did back then, finally, because it upset my dad a whole lot that I dated more than one boy. He was conventional and thought a girl should go with one boy and marry him, and that was it. Never. My mother, however, knew better, so I got by with a lot of dating. Let's see, what is there to tell? I graduated high school. My high school boyfriend was Dale Robertson, who was just absolutely adorable. He was kind of chunky, and he had really curly hair, and wasn't particularly good looking, but I sure did love the boy. And then we broke up, I guess, when I was a senior in high school. That was in 1960 I graduated, and I worked for a very short period of time at a little office in Rising Sun. And then I migrated to Washington, D.C., where my oldest sister Betty and her husband were living. And I stayed with them and got a job at Catholic University as a department secretary. And dated there, but nobody that I really fell for. I was still kind of heartbroken over Dale, because I really had thought we'd always get back together, but we never did. And so anyway, my dad had an accident and hurt his shoulder, and I thought that I might have to be financially responsible for the family, because I was working and I didn't have any family of my own like Betty and Dick did. So anyway, I got an opportunity to go home and work for civil service. So that's what I did. I left the university, and I went home and went to work at Aberdeen Proving Ground. There I met the cutest boy ever. I mean, ever. He still makes my heart flip. But he worked downstairs and I worked upstairs. And I paid the troops and he shipped the troops out. So I always had an excuse to go down and see him. And we went out, and that was the end of everything else. Once I went out with him, nothing or nobody else mattered. So we got married, of course, in January of 1964. Yeah. Got married in the Catholic Church at Haverty Grace. I think it was St. Patrick's. I'm not sure of the church name, but the priest that married us was a Father Mendelis. And I think he might have been a drunk. I think half the priests are drunks. So, after we got married, we moved to Richmond. And we lived in an apartment in the city of Richmond for almost a year, I guess. And Johnny came home from work one day and said we were going to look at this little house. And, oh, it was so cute. It was a little 2-bedroom house. And we took the big bedroom. Well, initially we were in the big bedroom. But then after I found out I was pregnant with your mom, Laura, then we had that bedroom. I had a counter built. I was working. I had again gone back to work for civil service. And so I had a man that I worked with build me a counter. And we divided the big bedroom with the counter into a guest bedroom and a nursery. And we put Laura's cradle in there, and then her crib, and she was, I guess, just a baby, probably not even a year old when we moved to Samoa Drive, which was another house in Henrico, because we had really nice neighbors, but the kids always had snotty noses, and it just killed me for those kids to handle your mom. I couldn't stand the thought of her having those snotty hands all over her. But I loved the kids. They were sweet little kids, and they loved your mom to death, but I just couldn't stand it. So we moved.
That was the one reason you moved.
That was the one reason we moved, yeah. Because I didn't want to tell them they couldn't play with her, but I didn't want them to play with her. It was crazy, but it just killed me to see that snot all over. So anyway, we moved to Samoa Drive, and we had nice neighbors there and had a good neighborhood. And I went back to work as a legal secretary for Mr. Hall. And he was crazy over Laura Lynn. And I always had this secret dread that he was going to try to take Laura Lynn away from me. I liked him and he was really nice, but I just didn't trust him. I thought he wants her. So anyway, we moved. Johnny come home one day and said, how would you like to move to, I forget where he said we were going to move to, but Maryland, because I would have been close to my home. And I was, of course, thrilled to death. I said, I'd love to move up there. So we did. We moved up to Lanham, and he became an independent polygraph operator. And he wasn't independent. He was working for Bill someone. I forget the name of the company he worked for. But Laura and I didn't really like living in the apartment. We were used to our house, and we felt homeless, really. Or I felt homeless, not owning my own home. It was the first time since, the first year we were married that we didn't own our own place, and I didn't like it. So, anyway, Johnny saw Stafford advertised, and we went down, and the first time we went down there, we bought this townhouse in Stafford and loved living there. in Stafford. It was just great because it was a great place for Laura, and there were close kids in the neighborhood, and it had nice sidewalks and playgrounds, and it was just a nice place. But then your dad, in the meantime, had changed his job and was working. I mean, your grandfather, sorry.
I know what you mean. You always do that.
Yeah, I always do that. So he had changed his job, and he was working for Best Products. And he didn't like working for Best Products. And that weekend, everybody was supposed to come to Stafford for Shannon's. I forgot to mention Shannon was born. Your mother would love that. So while we were at Stafford, I got pregnant, and Shannon was born. And that was in 1972, right? 72.
Yes.
66 and 72.
Glad you remember.
Yeah. Shannon was born in 72. And then Johnny quit his job because the family was supposed to come for Shannon's baptism, and Johnny's boss told him he had to work. And Johnny said no, he wasn't. So his boss said, well, you go home and think about it, and you call me and let me know what you want to do. Either you're going to work or you're fired. So, of course, Johnny, being the Irishman he is, said, fire me. So he come home, he called him and said, look, I've thought it over. I'm not coming in. So he got fired. Or he quit. I don't know how exactly they worked it out. But anyway, he quit working for Best Products, who was really paying him good. Then he went from having a very well-paid job to having no job. So he went for a while working just for a polygraph company here in Richmond. And he was traveling back and forth from Stafford to Richmond every day.
How long was he unemployed?
Not long. He got a job right away. But it wasn't a good paying job. Mm-hmm. He couldn't make very good money. So he ended up working, I think he was working 3 jobs. I know he was working for Mr. Hall, and he was working for the polygraph company, and I think he was doing another one, but I don't remember what it was. But it seems like he had 3 part-time jobs. Well, the polygraph job was a full-time job, and then 2 part-time jobs on top of it. So we moved back to Hanover County, to this house we're living in now. And then he went to work for Philip Morris. He was accepted back on Henrico Police Department and Philip Morris all at the same time. And he picked going to Philip Morris, which was absolutely the best choice. It was a really good choice, I think. So I stayed home. Shannon had her first birthday here. Laura Lynn was getting a little jealous of her. By the time she was 2, your mom was really jealous of her. And she's been jealous of her ever since. She will deny it, but the truth is she's jealous of her. She has no reason to be, but she thinks she does. So, anyway, Johnny went back to work at Philip Morris. I stayed home with the babies, and then eventually I think they were both in school. No, Shannon was older, but not quite in school yet. And I went back to work as a legal secretary for Fentress, Grace and Fentress. And then I worked for Will Hutchins. And then seems like I was home for a while. Oh, before Johnny went to work at Philip Morris. That's what it was. This was before Johnny went to work at Philip Morris. He bought a Tidy Car franchise. You know what Tidy Car is? You know, when you wax the cars and make them really pretty. So he bought that franchise, and he worked the franchise, and I was staying home with the kids, and sometimes I worked for him. Then he had to have back surgery, and when he had the back surgery, I had to run the business until he was able to. And it worked out pretty good. we were doing okay with it, but we were financially, I suppose, we were barely surviving. I don't really know. I know when we were in Stafford County, this is backtracking a little bit, but when we lived in Stafford County, we were just really bad off financially because, anyway, I thought we were. I don't know. I don't really know that we were because I never really knew what money he had and what money he didn't have. But I always felt like we were really bad off because I remember at one point that I had a savings account for Laura Lynn, and Johnny spent that money. So I know we had to have been pretty poor for him to spend that money. And then I remember one time he told me to charge groceries. And you never charge groceries. I mean, that was... So I'm pretty sure that when we were, right before we left Stafford, we were really, really poor.
Was that the year you got a bottle of ketchup for Christmas?
Yeah. Yeah. You remember that story?
What was that in reference? That was it.
Well, because there was a commercial that used to just tickle me to death. It was, it was fast
Burger
food.
King?
Yeah, I think it was Burger King. And it was at Christmas time, and she was so excited because he gave her a really nice looking package. And when she opened it up, it was a gift certificate to Burger King. And she opened it up, and the look on her face was just priceless. It was, oh my God, I don't believe he gave this to me. And then, so she said to him, what am I getting next year? A bottle of ketchup. And I just thought it was the funniest commercial in the world. So I was always laughing about that dumb commercial. So for Christmas, Johnny wraps up very fancy a bottle of ketchup. And I finally just got rid of that bottle of ketchup, I think.
I thought you had it.
Is it still in there? It might still be in there.
Maybe not.
But I thought, it's time really to let it go, I guess. But I kept it for years and years. But if I got rid of it at all, it's just been this past year when we moved back into here. Because I know I moved it to the condo with me.